This video is a look at the Station Road Steam Mazeppa locomotive. It's from the family of locomotives, Staffords, Feldbahns, General Gordons, all utilising the same boiler and chassis. The General Gordon has a 060 wheel arrangement, as do some Feldbahns, but the basic locomotives are all very similar. Mazeppa's got a slightly different saddle tank to the Stafford, different shape, comes with a full cab. The tender on this loco is one I had commissioned and painted in the same colour as the loco supplied from Station Road Steam. On this locomotive of mine I had a modification done, a drain tap on the balance pipe. So before every run I close this, because when I put the loco away last time I opened it to fully drain what's in the saddle tank. Before we start raising steam, I ensure the handbrakes are on and the loco's in mid-gear, and also you have to make sure there's sufficient water in the boiler. There is some in there, and there's a test cock on the glass there, and it needs slightly more water in that, around about half, for lighting up. There's a removable tray there, and underneath there's a valve with a spigot on, which I'll use to fill the loco with some water from a hose pipe. So I've just pushed the hose pipe onto that spigot. There's a safety slide there. I open the valve, turn the hose pipe on and add a little more water. That's about half a glass now, that should be sufficient. When steam raising and artificial draft's required up the chimney, this can either be an electric blower on the chimney, but because we have compressed air at our club I use a dart, and this is the dart I have, which goes in the chimney like so, and there's also a tap on there for increasing and decreasing the flow of air. Before I put my blower on, I'm going to load up the grate. This is charcoal, lumpwood charcoal, which I got from Aldi. Does the job very nicely, and I'm going to cover the grate with this charcoal. I'm going to keep doing that until I've got the grate completely covered in charcoal. Once I've got the fire bed covered in charcoal, I just put a mild bit of air up the blower pipe. I then get a small piece of fire lighter on the shovel, put that into the charcoal, close the door, and I'll increase the air up the chimney a little, but not too much. Just leave that going nice and gently till the charcoal catches. This charcoal is meant to be self-lighting, but I do soak it in paraffin occasionally. Our club gets coal from Signal Fuels, Ripley, Derbyshire, which is who Station Road Steam recommend. These sizes are actually the recommended beans. I often find the smaller grains are a little bit more efficient, especially at getting things going. Once the charcoal's ignited, I'll turn the blower up slightly more and add a little more charcoal. There's a fine point between having too much charcoal on and maybe clogging the grate up, but also not having enough charcoal going and not allowing the coal to take hold correctly. While the charcoal's taking hold, the next thing I do is fill the saddle tank up with water. I usually put the cap somewhere other than on the top of the saddle tank because they're always likely to slide, fall and make a mess of your paintwork. It does hold quite a nice volume of water. Once I'm happy the charcoal's well alight, then I'll start to add some coal, but only in small amounts. While the fire's getting established, time can be spent oiling up the locomotive. We also need to add a little drop of boiler water treatment into the saddle tank, as this is a steel boiler. This is the stuff you get from Station Road Steam. You only need a small amount. It does help see the water in the gauge as well because it gives it a red colour. Sometimes I pour a little into the hose pipe before filling the boiler rather than allowing this to pass through the injectors. We also need the steam cylinder oil. That goes into this reservoir. There's a little motor in there that pumps the oil, and there's a winding handle on the side so you can manually pump a little down the pipework before you start. As they come from Station Road Steam, they're set to deliver the maximum amount of oil, and they do lubricate very well, and that will probably last for a good 2 to 3 hour running session. And as I'm oiling up, I keep adding a little bit of coal, but not too much. So there's various oiling points. Also put some down the side of each of those bearings. An oiling point there on the die block. There's a reservoir there in the little end. I'll put some on the slide bar. Some little reservoirs for the cylinder and piston glands. Put some on the rods themselves. And of course we repeat that process on both sides. The maximum, well I should say the minimum amount of time recommended by Station Road Steam for getting steam up is 45 minutes. I'd agree with this, and I'd also say it's usually at least 45 minutes before there's enough pressure there to go onto the steam blower. I've oiled round now. I'm going to start adding some more coal. So this is a good time to go and make yourself a cup of tea, visit the toilet and come back to your engine in a little while. Of course, while you're waiting to create steam, it's a perfect opportunity to clean your loco. I usually use WD-40 or GT85. Some members like to use Mr. Sheen on the plate work. So usually that's what I do while I'm waiting for the pressure to rise. It's coming up to 30 minutes after lighting that firelighter now. Got about 10 pound of pressure on the gauge. The coal is starting to take, and I just sort of mention a few things that the eagle-eyed Station Road Steam user may have spotted. I could never get on with the shallow fire which is recommended. So a colleague from our club milled some of the sides of the grate off and made two fixings maybe an inch lower down to allow for a deeper fire. Also, to save bending over on the back, these extensions, they've just got a square inside there and it's held on with 4 Allen key grub screws to hold it onto the existing square head which this was on. They're quite useful. I could never quite work out and get which way the drain cock was open and closed because I used to get it hissing either way. So I've currently got automatic drain cocks on there. They just screw in the hollow square blocks with a floating ball inside and then the holes for the steam and water to be ejected from. I find them also useful if I'm going to put the loco in the car. They can be taken out easily and avoid catching the equipment that used to be there, because I find the little 90-degree clips very vulnerable and easy to be damaged. So that was my main reason for trying these, but also the other reason was if I let the juniors have a drive, they've got enough to think about without playing with the drain cocks, just watching what they're doing, braking and getting the engine going. So I thought this would make it slightly simpler for the juniors. So while we're waiting, we'll just look at the controls. Got the regulator handle here, got a paddle for the whistle, the front, or should I say the rear left, is the blower valve, the rear right is the steam for the vacuum ejector, and then the two front controls are for the steam for the injectors. We then got our boiler pressure gauge on the right and the cylinder valve chest gauge on the left, and down there under the right spectacle plate, that's the vacuum gauge. We've got the safety valve here with a turret taking the exhaust through the cab. Got the locomotive handbrake, that just operates blocks on the front set of wheels. Since I've got my recent new tender that's braked on all 4 wheels, I tend to use a brake on the tender when I'm running light engine just to keep it closer to hand. I've just got the lid of a toffet in here which is fixed to the floor plate by just a screw through there into a cork just to keep that in place. But every so often you've got to withdraw the ash from under the grate there, so that tray just makes it easier to pick up and tip out at your disposal area rather than just letting it go through onto the track or onto the foot plate. Now just for comparison, here are the smaller pieces of coal usually used for 5-inch. I believe these must be called grains, and the recommended size are these beams. But I do find that to get a good bed of fire established, it's nice to use a smaller coal till everything's running hunky-dory and then run on the larger stuff after. So I'd suggest experiment with both, but when lighting up and getting things going and covering the grate, the smaller stuff is quite nice to use. So I've just been walking around inspecting the track. One thing that I did was neglected to see that the left hand side hadn't lit very well, so a bit of a boo-boo there, so I'm just waiting for that to transfer over from the right to the left. So you have to keep your eye on the ball with what's going on. They recommend putting the steam blower on at 40 psi, but when you turn it on you do lose some pressure, so I usually wait till I can get up to 50 and then go on to the steam blower. Now I'm getting the fire established nicely now, but I did cost myself some time there with not spotting that the left hand side hadn't caught, so I've actually been at it an hour now I'd usually be at this stage in around 45 minutes. Got about 20 pound on the gauge. I'm just going to keep gently adding some coal and let that build up to around 50. So I've gone past the 60 mark. I've got all the unburnt coal going there. So I'm going to put the steam blower on carefully. See how quickly it drops there. Just over 40. I'll take my external blower off. Put the steam blower on. Of course, now you've got a steam blower on, you're using steam, and you're hoping that the blower will keep the fire going to increase the pressure, so just got to keep your eye on it. Might have to have the external blower back on. Usually I can get to this stage of having the steam blower on in around an hour, but I took my eye off the ball and been about an hour and 10 at it so far. Until I'm off shed and running successfully, I like to keep the tank covered, because you do get a fair bit of ash and grit coming out when you're steaming, so to help keep things clean while we're running on nice pure clean steam, I just like to keep it covered up till we're ready, and if it's a public day, wait till we're just about ready for hooking up to it and keep everything nice. So the loco was just at the point of blowing off. It's a familiar noise. So before going off shed I was testing the injectors. I just turn that blower off. Turn the water on, and I can look through the gap in the footplate there. Turn the steam on. And I generally find whatever you do, got to manipulate the water somewhat to get them to pick up. This is an original Station Road Steam injector. It has been modified by one of our members. Put a little bit of blower back on, and this left hand one was from David English. Tends to work pretty well. So now I'm happy that both injectors functioning correctly before coming off shed. Because we're on a raised level here, I prefer to walk the engine off the shed. Also the drain cocks, I wish you a load of water at first. I'm not doing too much because I've not got much regulator in there. Another reason for having the towel on is if you've not cleared all the condensate correctly and you inadvertently open up, you can get a good couple of pints of liquid coming out the chimney and makes a bit of a mess. So at first I'm just going to go very gingerly, put her in full forward gear. I'm just unscrewing the tender handbrake now. One benefit of having the steam pressure chest gauge there is you can see what you're adding in there, just a light amount. Take it off again to make it go, make those cocks clear. I've just got a twig on the line there. I'll just remove that, but also before I enter the main circuit of track I like to check on the fire, retest the injectors and make sure everything's hunky dory. So I've just had a wee bit more coal. Happy the injectors are all good. Handbrake's off. In full forward gear. So we'll just head off nice and steady. I'm just going very steady because I'm just going down a gradient, and I'm just going to test the bite of the brake on the tender and get a feel. Which is all very good. I've just left a wee bit of blower on there because we're on the light engine, we're not really pulling much. Once I've got rolling now on the level, I'm going to go to third notch. Of course, these locos are narrow gauge, the top heavy, and they're quite bouncy, so you need to do a moderate speed, nothing too crazy. Of course, we do have a whistle. There's nobody here now, but I'll just demonstrate it the once. I'm currently using a cloth in my hands for the hot parts. There's different schools of thought, but some inspectors on the full size railway advise me that whilst the gloves are very protective, if you do start melting them or they catch fire, by the time you've realised and they're sticking to your flesh, it's too late. So the cloth is quite good in the hand, although I would recommend juniors using gloves because they might inadvertently touch something. So I'm just going to have a little play now, and I'll report back later. Incidentally, if you're curious, the tender came from CMD Engineering. They're based in Essex, but I found their tender to be reasonably priced. It's actually to go with a locomotive called Night. It is a little bit small. I have got an air compressor inside there and my cans of oil and also an electric blower fan stored in there. It's a little bit tight on the legs. My feet do get a bit warm. I have had to make a little box to put the coal in on the front because I was suffering from space, but I did have a second-hand tender from somebody, but I wanted something commensurate to the quality of the loco, and I think it fits it very well. They painted it in the same colours for me, and I think it's a superb addition. And I hope you enjoy this Station Road Steam Mazeppa locomotive video. If you're like myself and you've fancied owning and operating a live steam loco but not got the engineering equipment or skills to build one from scratch, or even the amount of life left to be able to do that in the time it takes, Station Road steam kits are a good opportunity to do that. You can buy complete ready to run locomotives. You can buy Station Road steam locomotives that might have been traded in. You can also buy most of their range as a kit form, simply put together with hand tools, no soldering required, and these are generally available in 12 stages. You save some money on the overall cost of buying a ready to run locomotive. Of course you do have to do your own painting, that could be hand brushed or sprayed, or you could take it for professional spraying. And you know how to put it together, you know how it works. If there's any problems, you get a little bit of kudos from the club in the fact that you've put something together, and I think they're fit for purpose. They're made in Britain, made in UK in Lincoln, a little village called Metheringham, and they're a superb product. I'm only running light engine, but the locos come fitted with a vacuum ejector. There's the ejector there. Here's the valve for operating the brake. It's currently in the off position, and it comes with a male spigot for putting your vacuum pipe on. Because I have my own tender on, I got another spigot from Station Road Steam, and I just have a through pipe, which is a rubber pipe, through there to the back for connecting to the stock. I've also got an air compressor inside the tender. That's the fitting for the air for running on air brakes. So I've run for about 2 hours 20 minutes now. I'm just letting the fire burn right down to ash, so I don't have any unburnt coal left in there, so there's a lot less to clean. I'm going to try and get some water in, even though I'm only down to 60 psi. So I can arrive on shed. There's plenty of water in. The steaming area now. Got half a glass of water. Now even with the blower on, there's not much fire in there. That fire would not boil away that remaining water. I will see if I can get any more in, but it's not very easy because I'm only down to about 45 psi. Sometimes you can still do it. Sometimes you struggle. Yeah. Nope. Nearly. Anyway, there's a sufficient info. So all I'm going to do now is turn the blower off. That remaining fire there, that'll die down very quickly once the blower's gone off. So while that's cooling down, I'm just going to polish the bodywork up a bit. I will, for the purpose of this video, film some disposing. However, generally I wouldn't do this on the same day as a run. I'd do it on another day when the engine's completely cooled down. Now I have been tempted sometimes to leave the blower on just to burn off any remaining coal, but the trouble is, when that has burnt off, you've got a chance of the blower then sending the cooler water and filling the smoke box up with water. So I just turn the blower off and leave it off, make sure the regulator's shut. And then, depending on your preference, as I've got my valve here fitted, I open that to drain the side of the saddle tank, both sides via the balance pipe. I also open the injector water taps to help drain the saddle tank. Now, depending whether you like to leave your loco with water in or without, you can drain it all out completely. If it's winter time and there's a risk of freezing, you might want to drain it out. Again, there's different schools of thought. Some say if you leave the water in, it's less oxygen that can go in the boiler and rust the boiler inside. Others like to think about the water being expelled totally and then the boiler drying itself out. Also, it adds to the weight, so you might want to push it a bit easier if it's a bit lighter. You might also forget, then you've left a tap open or something, and there's chance of water flowing into your shed and making your wheel rims go rusty. So it's up to you really, but if you do want to drain the water via the filling tap underneath, you do need to let it go down to almost zero pressure. It's okay spraying steam out, but any dirt and muck on the floor is going to bounce back up and make your frames all mucky. So if you do want to drain it, I'd wait till it's only just warm enough to flow out as water, warm water, rather than steam and make any mess. So I've just spent 5 minutes wiping the loco over. The blower's been off, so the fire has gone out. So it's time to go and have another cup of tea now while things cool down. So I've made a cup of tea while the engine's cooling down. Got Henry at the ready here, and I'm going to turn him on and open the door so I can catch any ash that's built up before it falls out onto my towel and any mess that might occur. Excess for now. So now I'm going to remove the smoke box door bar, and then I'm going to give each tube a brush out with my tube brush. I do it from this side because I've still got the grating, and then I can feel when I've got through. And also, if I did it from the other side, I might bash that blower pipe and bend it. So I like to do it from this side. So now I've brushed the tubes, I'm just going to get my little poker and try and bring as much ash and crud to the front. Sometimes it's got oil in it, sometimes there might be a bit of water and condensate. If it was all dry, I'd hoover that out, but I think I'm going to get a paper towel and just pick that out from there. So yeah, there's a bit of gloop and stuff there that I've picked out. There's still a little bit of dry ash in the smoke box there. I'll just pick that up. There's nothing too bad in there now remaining. It's going to spoil things for future run. Just give the face of the door there a wipe off of any ash. Also smear a little bit of oil around the face of the door there. Just to make a bit of a film of oil. Try not to pull the paint off as much. And refit the bar. There's the door up. Quite difficult one-handed. Well, that's closed up tight now. Just wipe off any excess now from that face of the door. Keep it all nice and clean. And then I can move that away, and that way nothing's gone all over the buffers and cylinders in motion. Now, Henry's a very useful piece of kit for keeping your engine clean. You can get a variant of a Henry. You can get one called a Titan Vac from Screwfix or Tool Station, just under £40. I strongly recommend getting one, they're very useful. And in this instance, I'm just going to rake the ash out from the ash pan. Well, I've got the Henry back there to help get rid of some of the mess. You get the idea. So I've cleaned the excess ash from the ash pan there with a vacuum cleaner, and now can remove these wing nuts. And then I'm able to get hold of the whole unit and withdraw that from there. I won't do that filming because I'll need two hands. This is the unit part way out. As you can see, the cowl underneath is coming with it rather than pulling all the ash onto the cab floor. So the grate assembly is all removed. There's a wee bit of ash in there from pushing through. I'm just going to vac that out. So I've quickly tipped the coal out, prodded the grate through with a handy little twig. I'll just put some oil on these threads, and then I'll replace that assembly. Now that's back in place. It's still warm, so it's still keeping the heating, stopping the boiler cooling down too rapidly, but you don't want to be doing that any more than a couple of minutes really. And I've only done it today for the purpose of the video. I would suggest usually coming back and doing that separately on a different day. But that's left me with minimal mess. Now I get my handy little dry paintbrush there, brush any ash that's accumulated on the frames there or in the foot plate down the side. Now I've still got some pressure there, around about £10. Generally in the summertime I'd leave the water in, but if you want to you can open the tap and let some out underneath. I won't do that because I may as well leave it in for now. If I was doing that as well, I'd stick a short piece of hose on there so it's not splashing underneath everywhere. I've also got round about the perfect level of water in there for firing up next time. Did take me a long time today, but I did have the water quite high because I was filming while I was feeding it in, so when that starts to get warmer it'll actually swell and go up to about half once you get a fire in, so it's more or less ready now to put away. Put my little ashtray back in place, which incidentally on certain ones there's no cutout for the pin there, and I do like the Station Road Steam pin, so cut that out to fit that pin in. I hope you found this video useful. Of course many of you will know exactly what to do and I'm just telling you how to suck eggs. There might be other Station Road Steam Loco owners that might think, oh, I don't do that, I'll give that a try. But more so, if you're considering buying one of these locos, I think I've covered everything you might need to know, and hope you find this video useful. Please like it, and if you could subscribe as well, help spread the word to other like-minded people, and it's totally free. Thank you for watching. I've got other videos on there with a general garden and steamings of my other hobby, which is Gauge 3 Scenic Garden Railway, so please take a look. Thank you.